Tom was a hiker. He loved the mountains more than anything else. Every morning he woke up early, packed his small backpack with a few essentials, and walked through the forest near his tiny apartment. Life had not been easy for him. He worked odd jobs, never making much money, and most days he barely had enough for food. One chilly morning, while Tom was walking along a narrow trail, he felt his phone vibrate. He rarely got calls, so he was surprised. It was a message from a lawyer's office in a city he had never visited. The message said, "You have been named the sole heir to an abandoned lodge. Please contact us for details." Tom blinked. A lodge? He had never owned anything beyond his small apartment and a battered old tent. And an abandoned lodge sounded strange. He called the number immediately. A calm, professional voice answered and explained that an old distant relative he had never met had passed away. This relative had owned a lodge in the mountains, and now it belonged to Tom. At first, Tom laughed. It felt unreal. He had spent his life hiking and dreaming, and now, suddenly, he might own a lodge. The lawyer sent him documents and explained that the lodge had been abandoned for decades. It was empty, old, and in need of serious repair. Tom's excitement mixed with worry. How could he manage an entire lodge by himself? But something inside him stirred. He had always dreamed of living closer to the mountains. Owning a lodge, even an old and abandoned one, was more than he had ever imagined. 2 days later, he packed his backpack with supplies, a notebook, and his camera, and set out for the lodge. The trail was long, winding through thick forests and steep hills. The closer he got, the more he felt like he was stepping into another world. The air smelled fresher, the sky looked bigger, and the mountains rose like silent guardians all around him. Finally, after hours of hiking, he reached the lodge. It sat alone on a high ridge surrounded by pine trees. The paint was peeling, the windows were dusty, and the wooden door hung slightly off its hinges. The roof had a few missing tiles, and a wooden sign that once read the lodge's name was now cracked and faded. Tom walked around the building, touching the walls and examining the old stone foundation. He could feel the history of the place. It had once been lively. Children must have laughed here. Families must have gathered, and people must have shared stories around a fireplace. But now it was silent, empty, and forgotten. He pushed the creaking door open. Dust floated in the sunlight, and the air smelled of old wood and moss. He stepped inside carefully, taking pictures and making notes in his notebook. There were several rooms. One looked like a dining hall with a large fireplace and wooden tables. Another was a kitchen with old, rusty utensils. The bedrooms were small, and the beds had long since lost their mattresses. Tom felt a mixture of awe and fear. The lodge was beautiful in its own quiet way, but it needed a lot of work. As he explored, he wondered how he would ever fix it. He did not have the money for renovations, and there were no neighbors for miles. While walking through the main floor, Tom noticed something unusual. One of the walls looked slightly different from the others. The paint was newer, or at least it seemed newer. There was a faint outline, as if the wall hid something. He pressed his hand against it. It felt solid, but there was a small draft of cold air coming from the bottom. Curiosity took over. Tom looked around for a tool and found an old crowbar in the corner. He started prying at the edges of the wall. Slowly, a small panel gave way. Behind it, there was a dark space. Tom shone his flashlight inside and saw a narrow staircase going down. His heart raced. He had discovered a hidden room. Tom hesitated for a moment. He was tired, hungry, and the thought of going into an unknown underground room was frightening. But his curiosity was stronger. He grabbed a rope and tied it around his waist, just in case. Then he climbed down the stairs carefully. The hidden room was small but deep. It smelled of damp earth and old wood. In the middle of the room, covered with dust and cobwebs, was a wooden chest. Tom's hands trembled as he lifted the lid. Inside, he found stacks of papers, old maps, and small boxes with strange markings. He pulled out one of the maps. It showed the area around the lodge, but there were markings he did not understand. Some looked like symbols, and others looked like paths that did not exist anymore. Among the papers, there was also a letter addressed to him. The handwriting was shaky but careful. To the heir of this lodge, if you are reading this, know that you are about to discover what many have tried to find and failed. The lodge holds more than memories. It holds a secret. Protect it and it will protect you. Tom's mind raced. A secret, what could it be? He carefully examined the boxes. One had gold coins, another had old jewelry, and one even had small gemstones. He could not believe his eyes. The hidden room was filled with treasures that must have been collected over decades, maybe centuries. He took some pictures and made notes in his notebook. This discovery was incredible. He realized that this treasure could change his life forever. No longer would he struggle to pay for food or a place to live. He could repair the lodge, live comfortably, and maybe even start a small business for travelers and hikers who loved the mountains as much as he did. Tom spent the night in the lodge. He built a small fire in the fireplace and ate the food he had brought. His mind could not stop racing. He thought about how this abandoned place had become his home overnight. He also felt a sense of responsibility. This treasure was not just for him. Someone had protected it for decades, waiting for the right heir to find it. The next morning, Tom climbed out of the hidden room and started planning. He would need to clean the lodge, secure the hidden room, and research the maps and papers he had found. He also knew he had to be careful. A discovery like this could attract unwanted attention if the secret got out. Despite his worries, Tom felt a deep joy. For the first time in his life, he had a place that belonged to him. A place that held history, mystery, and opportunity. The mountains seemed to welcome him, and the wind whispered through the trees as if encouraging him to take the next step. Tom knew that his life was about to change. He did not know how or when, but he felt certain that the hidden room in the abandoned lodge was only the beginning. There were more secrets to uncover, more adventures to experience, and a future that he had never dared to dream. As he looked out from the lodge balcony, the sun rose over the peaks, painting the mountains in shades of gold and pink. Tom smiled. He was a hiker and explorer, and now unexpectedly the keeper of a secret treasure. The journey ahead would be challenging, but for the first time, he felt ready. The abandoned lodge, with all its silence and mystery, had become his new world. And deep inside, Tom could feel that the hidden room had more to reveal than he had yet imagined. Tom spent the first morning after his discovery carefully studying the maps and papers from the hidden room. He spread them across the dusty dining table, using a candle for better light. The maps were old, drawn with ink that had faded in some places, but the shapes of the mountains and rivers were clear. Some of the markings seemed ordinary at first, small X's, dotted lines, and numbers. But others were strange symbols he did not recognize. Some looked like letters from a language he had never seen. Tom's curiosity grew. He wanted to understand every detail. The letters in the old note from his relative seemed to hint that the maps held secrets beyond mere treasure. He decided to start with the X's. Each one seemed to mark a location nearby, not too far from the lodge. Tom packed a small backpack with water, some food, his flashlight, and a notebook. He was careful to bring a rope as well, remembering the hidden staircase he had climbed down the day before. The first X led him along a narrow trail that wound through the forest. The trees grew thick, and the sun barely reached the forest floor. Tom felt the thrill of an explorer as he hiked. Birds chirped in the distance, and small streams crossed the trail, sparkling in the morning light. After walking for nearly 2 hours, Tom reached a clearing. In the middle stood an old stone well, half covered with moss and vines. He examined it closely. It was not just a well. It had a small compartment at the base. Tom knelt down and used his small tools to open it carefully. Inside, he found a small box. He opened the box slowly. Inside were a few gold coins, old but well preserved, and a folded note. The note read, "The first test is complete. Trust your instincts, for the path ahead is not only of wealth but of wisdom." Tom's heart raced. His excitement grew, but he also felt the weight of responsibility. Someone had planned this treasure hunt carefully, leaving hints and challenges for the heir. It was not just about taking the gold. It was about understanding, learning, and proving himself worthy. He returned to the lodge with the box and the note. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the mountains. Tom carefully stored the new treasures in the hidden room, making sure everything was secure. He lit a small fire in the fireplace and sat, thinking. The lodge had become more than a home. It was a puzzle, a mystery waiting for him to solve. The next day, Tom studied the maps again. He noticed that the lines on one map seemed to form a pattern when connected. It was almost like a secret route through the mountains leading from one X to another. He decided to follow it. He packed more supplies this time. Extra food, a blanket, a compass, and even a small first aid kit. He wanted to be prepared. The journey was longer and more difficult than the first. He climbed steep hills, crossed streams, and sometimes had to crawl under low branches. The air was fresh but cold, and the sun felt distant behind the tall mountains. At the second location, marked with an X, he found an old cabin hidden in the trees. The cabin was small, made of logs, and clearly had not been used in years. Tom knocked on the wooden door, even though he knew no one would answer. He pushed it open slowly. Inside, dust covered the floor and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. In the corner, there was another small chest. Tom opened it with care and discovered an assortment of old tools, gemstones, and a folded piece of parchment. The parchment had writing that seemed like a riddle. Strength is needed to reach the heart, but patience will open what force cannot. Seek what lies beneath the tallest pine. Tom frowned. The riddle was confusing but exciting. He wrote it down in his notebook. He realized that each location had not only treasures but also instructions, hints or puzzles that he would need to solve to progress. This was not a simple inheritance. It was a carefully designed challenge. Returning to the lodge, Tom felt more determined than ever. He understood that the hidden room and the maps were connected. Someone had designed this treasure hunt for someone brave, intelligent, and patient. Tom could feel that he was being tested, and he welcomed it. Days passed, and Tom continued following the maps. He learned to read the symbols and understand the patterns. Some X's led to small treasures, coins, jewelry, or notes. Others led to puzzles. At one point, he discovered a small wooden box that had a lock with no key. Inside the box was a message. The key is not metal, but vision. Look closely at what others ignore. Tom thought for hours. Finally, he realized that the lock had a hidden mechanism. By pressing a small hidden button at the bottom, he opened it. Inside was a small golden key and a folded note. The key will open the next secret. Courage and care will guide you. The mountains became his classroom. He learned to read old symbols, understand riddles, and navigate difficult terrain. He also learned patience. Not every day brought a discovery. Some days he returned to the lodge empty-handed, tired, and frustrated. But he never gave up. One morning, after a week of exploring, he reached a very high hill at the edge of the map. The tallest pine stood proudly at the top. Tom climbed carefully, feeling the wind whip against his face. The view from the top was breathtaking. He could see the lodge far below, the forests, rivers, and distant mountains stretching endlessly. Beneath the pine, he dug carefully with his hands. The soil was loose, and soon he hit something solid. It was a small metal box, heavy and cold. He pulled it out and opened it. Inside was an assortment of gemstones, old coins, and another note. You have reached the heart of the treasure. Protect it, and it will protect you. Tom stared at the treasure. He could hardly believe it. The wealth in front of him was more than he had ever imagined. But he felt a strange sense of responsibility. This treasure was not simply his. It was a legacy, a secret protected for generations, and now it had come into his care. Returning to the lodge with the treasure, Tom realized that the maps had taught him more than how to find riches. They had taught him patience, careful thinking, and respect for history. He felt proud of himself. He had followed the path, solved the riddles, and discovered the hidden treasures. That night he sat in the lodge, counting the coins and examining the gemstones. He smiled as he looked around the abandoned rooms. The lodge had transformed in his mind. It was no longer empty and forgotten. It was alive with stories, mystery, and the thrill of discovery. Tom decided that he would not keep the treasures hidden forever. He wanted to restore the lodge, share its history, and let others experience the magic of the mountains. But he also knew that some secrets needed to remain safe, and he would protect the hidden room and the maps carefully. As he looked out at the mountains, Tom felt a deep sense of gratitude. The abandoned lodge had changed his life in ways he could not have imagined. From a broke hiker struggling day by day, he had become the guardian of a secret legacy, with treasures that could make him rich but also taught him lessons far more valuable. He leaned back in his chair, feeling the warmth of the fire and the cool night air from the open windows. Tom knew that this was only the beginning. The lodge, the hidden room, and the mysterious maps had many more secrets, and he was ready to discover every one of them, one step at a time. Tom had spent several weeks exploring the lodge and following the maps. The treasures he found were exciting, but he began to realize that the lodge itself needed care. The floors creaked, the roof leaked in the rain, and the old windows rattled in the wind. He could not ignore it anymore. One bright morning, he decided to start cleaning and repairing the lodge. He carried buckets of water, scrubbed the floors, and patched small holes in the walls. It was hard work, but Tom felt proud. Each day, the lodge looked a little better. Sunlight streamed through the cleaned windows, and the fireplace seemed warmer and welcoming. While working, Tom noticed movement in the distance. A small group of hikers had arrived on the trail. They had heard stories about the old lodge and wanted to explore it. Tom hesitated at first. He had never met anyone in the area, and he was protective of the lodge. But he decided to welcome them. "Hello," Tom called as the hikers approached. "I am Tom, the caretaker of this lodge. Please be careful inside, it is old." The hikers smiled. They were friendly and curious. They admired the lodge and its surrounding forests. Tom showed them the main rooms, but he did not reveal the hidden room yet. He felt that some secrets should remain safe. The hikers stayed for the night, and Tom made a small fire in the fireplace. They shared stories, talked about their travels, and laughed. Tom realized how lonely he had been before discovering the lodge. He enjoyed their company and saw that the lodge could become a place where people shared memories just like it had long ago. After the hikers left, Tom returned to the hidden room. He studied the maps and notes again, thinking about the riddle he had found beneath the tallest pine. There seemed to be more to discover. One note hinted at a guardian of the treasure. Tom wondered if it meant someone had left signs or clues to protect the secret. The next week, Tom explored a part of the forest he had not visited. He climbed over fallen trees, crossed streams, and followed faint trails. At the edge of a small canyon, he found another mark similar to those on the maps. It was carved into a large stone half covered with moss. He examined it carefully. The carving was a symbol he had seen before on one of the notes in the hidden room. He realized that this was part of the instructions. He followed the direction of the carving and soon discovered a small cave hidden behind a curtain of vines. Inside the cave, the walls were smooth, and the floor was dry. In the center, there was a small chest with a locked lid. Tom's heart raced. He tried the golden key he had found beneath the tallest pine. It fit perfectly. Inside the chest were more gemstones and a small box. When he opened the box, he found an old compass with strange markings and another note. "The path of fortune is not only gold but direction. The compass will guide you to what eyes cannot see." Tom held the compass carefully. It had an arrow that did not point north. Instead, it turned slowly, sometimes pointing toward the mountains, sometimes toward the forest. He realized that the compass would guide him to the next hidden location, perhaps something even greater than treasure. That night, he returned to the lodge, deep in thought. He had wealth maps, riddles, and now a magical compass. The lodge had transformed from a forgotten building into a place full of adventure, secrets, and possibility. Tom could feel that the story of the lodge was far from over. The following days were busy. Tom repaired the roof with new wooden panels, fixed broken windows, and cleaned the fireplaces in each room. He built small furniture from old wood he found in the forest. Each day the lodge looked more inviting. He began imagining travelers visiting, hikers resting, and families making memories. One afternoon, as he was stacking firewood outside, Tom noticed smoke rising from the forest. Curious, he grabbed his binoculars and scanned the area. A group of hikers seemed to have set up camp nearby. They waved when they saw him. Tom smiled. He realized that the lodge might soon become known to more visitors. But the excitement also brought caution. Tom knew that the hidden treasures and the secret room must be protected. He decided to create a more secure entrance. Using old planks, tools, and clever designs from his maps, he built a hidden panel that was almost invisible to the eye. Only he knew the secret to opening it. Even with these precautions, Tom felt restless. He wanted to understand the compass and follow its guidance. The notes and maps hinted at something extraordinary, perhaps even more valuable than gold. One morning he decided it was time to explore beyond the familiar trails. He packed a larger backpack, food for several days, water, a rope, flashlight, notebook, and his camera. He also carried the compass carefully in his pocket. The arrow pointed toward a dense part of the forest where he had not ventured before. Tom followed it cautiously, stepping over roots and stones, listening to the distant sounds of birds and streams. After hours of hiking, he reached a small waterfall hidden in a valley. The water sparkled like crystal, and the rocks glistened with moss. Tom noticed a small stone platform beside the waterfall. It looked unnatural, almost like it had been placed there deliberately. On the platform was a stone box, sealed but weathered by time. Tom approached slowly, remembering the instructions from the notes. He used the compass to find the exact alignment. When he placed it on the box in a specific way, he heard a soft click. The stone box opened, revealing a collection of rare gemstones, gold coins, and another note. You have proven courage, patience, and wisdom. The final step will reveal the greatest secret of the lodge. Tom's eyes widened. The treasures were incredible, but the final secret hinted at something beyond material wealth. He realized that the lodge, the hidden room, the maps, and the compass were all part of a larger story. Someone had created this journey not only to hide wealth, but to test character and intelligence. Returning to the lodge, Tom felt a mixture of excitement and determination. He now had the key, the compass, and clues to the final secret. The lodge had become a place of adventure, not just for him but potentially for those who would visit in the future. That night, he sat by the fire, examining the treasures carefully. The gemstones glimmered in the candlelight, and the coins reflected the dancing flames. But it was not just the wealth that made him happy. It was the sense of discovery, the thrill of solving puzzles, and the connection he felt to the unknown relative who had left these challenges. Tom realized that he had changed. The broke hiker who had arrived weeks ago was no longer the same. He had become thoughtful, patient, brave, and careful. The lodge had not only given him wealth but also confidence, skill, and a sense of purpose. As he looked out the window at the moonlight reflecting on the mountains, Tom whispered to himself, I am ready for the final secret. The lodge, once abandoned and silent, was now alive with possibility. Tom knew that the adventure was far from over. The hidden room, the maps, and the compass were guiding him to something extraordinary, something that could change his life forever. The mountains around him seemed to watch silently, guarding the secrets, waiting for the right moment to reveal the final truth. And Tom, with courage and determination, was ready to discover it. Tom had spent weeks exploring, repairing, and uncovering the lodge's hidden treasures. Each day brought new discoveries and new lessons. The lodge was slowly coming back to life, and the mountains around it seemed less lonely. But Tom knew that the final secret of the hidden room was still waiting. One morning, as he was tending the fireplace in the main hall, he heard voices from outside. Curious, he peeked through the window. A small group of hikers had arrived again. They waved and called out, clearly drawn by stories of the lodge. Tom smiled. He felt proud to share his work, but he reminded himself to be cautious. The hidden room and its treasures must remain a secret. He opened the door and greeted the hikers warmly. Welcome to the lodge, he said. Feel free to look around, but some areas are off limits for safety. The hikers explored the main rooms, admiring the restored floors and furniture. They asked questions about the history of the lodge, and Tom shared stories he had read in old papers he found in the hidden room. The hikers listened eagerly, impressed by the care Tom had taken to restore the lodge. After they left, Tom returned to the hidden room. He examined the treasures from the stone box beneath the waterfall. The note from that discovery still haunted him. The final step will reveal the greatest secret of the lodge. He wondered what it could be. Gold and gemstones were valuable, but the note suggested something far more extraordinary awaited him. The compass from the cave still puzzled him. Its arrow did not point north. Instead, it swiveled gently as if it were alive. Tom realized that the compass might lead him to the last secret. He packed it carefully along with his notebook and flashlight, and prepared for another expedition. He followed the arrow through dense forest trails, over streams and across hills he had never climbed before. The air was crisp and cold, and the sounds of the forest were louder than ever. Birds called from the treetops, and small animals rustled through the undergrowth. The compass seemed to guide him with a quiet certainty. After several hours, he reached a small plateau with a crystal-clear lake at its center. The arrow of the compass pointed to a large boulder at the lake's edge. Tom approached carefully. The boulder was unusual. Its surface had strange engravings similar to the symbols he had seen in the maps and notes. Tom examined the engravings closely. They formed a pattern that matched one of the hidden room's old maps. He pressed lightly on a symbol, and with a soft click, a small compartment opened in the boulder. Inside was a wooden box, aged but intact. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside the box was a single scroll, sealed with a golden ribbon. Tom unrolled it carefully. The writing was neat and precise. To the heir of this lodge you have proven courage, patience, and wisdom. The treasures you have found are rewards, but the true gift is knowledge. This lodge is not only a home, it is a legacy. Use it to inspire, protect, and share the wonders of the mountains. The hidden room is not merely a place of gold. It is a reminder that life's greatest treasures are discovery, courage, and kindness. Tom read the scroll twice, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. The message was clear. The lodge and its treasures were meant not only to enrich him but also to inspire others and protect the legacy of the mountains. The adventure had taught him far more than wealth. It had taught him responsibility, care, and courage. Returning to the lodge, Tom felt a new determination. He wanted to share the beauty of the lodge without revealing the hidden treasures. He began making plans to welcome hikers, travelers, and families. The lodge could become a safe haven for adventurers, a place of learning and a home filled with stories. He started small. He cleared the surrounding trails, repaired the paths, and built benches and small shelters. He hung lanterns along the main trail and created simple maps for visitors to explore safely. Word slowly spread about the restored lodge, and more hikers began arriving. Tom welcomed each visitor with warmth, sharing stories about the lodge's history and the beauty of the mountains. But he never revealed the hidden room or the treasures. He kept that secret carefully, knowing it was part of the lodge's legacy. The mountains had protected it for generations, and now it was his responsibility to do the same. One morning, while preparing breakfast for a small group of visitors, Tom noticed a stranger standing near the entrance. The man looked curious but cautious. Tom approached him and introduced himself. "Hello, I'm Tom. Welcome to the lodge," he said. The stranger smiled. "I've heard stories about this place," he said. "I'm curious to see it myself." Tom showed him the main rooms, the fireplace, and the restored furniture. The stranger was impressed, asking questions about the lodge's history and architecture. Tom shared what he knew from the old papers and maps, careful not to mention the hidden room. As the days passed, more visitors arrived. Some came for hiking, others for the peace of the mountains. Tom taught them about nature, survival skills, and respect for the land. The lodge became lively again, filled with laughter, stories, and the smell of wood fires. Yet the hidden room remained a private sanctuary for Tom. He continued to explore the maps, study the notes, and use the compass to understand the lodge's history. Each discovery reminded him of the mysterious relative who had left this legacy, and the lessons hidden within the treasures. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Tom sat by the fire in the hidden room. He looked at the gold, gemstones, and coins, but his thoughts were not on wealth. He realized that the true reward was the journey, the knowledge, and the ability to share this incredible place with others. Suddenly, a sound outside caught his attention. A deer had entered the clearing, pausing to drink from the small stream near the lodge. Tom smiled. The mountains were alive. The forest was full of life, and the lodge was no longer abandoned. It had awakened under his care. The next morning, he decided to make one final improvement. He created a small library in one of the rooms using old books he had found in the lodge and new ones he collected. Visitors could read about the history of the mountains, the lodge, and even old survival techniques. The library became a favorite spot for hikers to rest and learn. Tom also began documenting his own adventures. He wrote down each discovery, the challenges he had faced, and the lessons he had learned from the maps, notes, and treasures. One day, he hoped to share these stories with the world, inspiring others to explore, protect, and respect nature. The lodge, once silent and forgotten, was now a place of life, learning, and wonder. Tom had transformed it from an abandoned building into a home for travelers and adventurers. He had protected the hidden treasures and used his newfound wealth to improve the lodge and the surrounding trails. At night, when the mountains were quiet and the stars shone brightly, Tom would sit by the fire and think about his journey. From a broke hiker struggling day by day, he had become the caretaker of a legacy. He had wealth, knowledge, and the satisfaction of knowing he had done something meaningful. The hidden room, The treasures and the maps were still a part of the lodge, but their greatest purpose had been fulfilled. They had guided Tom to courage, wisdom, and responsibility. He smiled as he looked out at the moonlit mountains, knowing that the lodge would continue to protect and inspire for generations to come. Tom woke early, as he always did, with the soft light of the rising sun spilling over the mountains. The lodge had changed in so many ways since he had first arrived weeks ago. The floors gleamed, the windows sparkled, and the fireplace filled the rooms with warmth. Visitors were arriving more frequently, and he had started to see the lodge as not just a home but a place full of life, laughter, and discovery. Yet, the hidden room still called to him. He had uncovered most of the treasures and followed the riddles and maps, but a part of him felt that the lodge had one final secret waiting. The compass he had discovered weeks earlier still pointed in a quiet, steady direction. Its arrow seemed to whisper that his journey was not yet complete. After a quick breakfast, Tom packed a small bag with essentials: a notebook, flashlight, rope, and the compass. He entered the hidden room carefully, closing the door behind him. The treasures, gold, gemstones, and coins, sat in neat piles, but he paid them little attention. Today, the adventure was about discovery, not wealth. Following the compass, he walked through the forest trails. The arrow led him farther than he had ever gone before. The trees became taller, the undergrowth thicker, and the mountains steeper. Tom felt both excitement and caution. He had grown stronger, wiser, and more patient since discovering the lodge, but nature always demanded respect. After hours of hiking, he reached a secluded valley, hidden from view by rocky hills and thick pines. The compass arrow pointed to the center of the valley, where a small clearing opened to reveal a stone pedestal, weathered by time. Carved into it were intricate symbols that matched those in the hidden room. Tom's heart raced. He knew that the final secret awaited here. He examined the pedestal carefully. In a shallow depression at the top lay a small flat stone. Pushing it aside, he discovered a narrow opening beneath the pedestal. It led to a small underground chamber, just large enough for one person to kneel. Inside there was a single chest made of ancient wood, sealed with a delicate golden lock. Tom's hands trembled as he inserted the golden key he had found beneath the tallest pine. The lock clicked open smoothly. He lifted the lid and found not gold, gemstones, or coins, but a collection of carefully preserved letters, journals, and drawings. Each one told the story of the lodge and its history, its builders, the families who had stayed there, and the adventures of those who had hidden the treasures over generations. He read one letter aloud. To the heir, the true treasure is not in gold, but in knowledge, courage, and the care of the lodge. Protect it, and the mountains will protect you. Share its stories wisely, for the lodge is a legacy, not merely a building. Tom smiled. The final secret was clear. The lodge had been designed as a test, not just for wealth, but for character. Those who discovered the treasures were rewarded not only with riches, but also with wisdom, patience, and responsibility. He realized that all the previous riddles, maps, and challenges had prepared him to understand this truth. Returning to the lodge, Tom felt a sense of completeness. The treasures were safe, the hidden room secured, and the final secret revealed. He began planning how to preserve the history of the lodge for future generations. He created a special section in the library for the letters, journals, and maps he had found. Visitors could now learn about the lodge's story, the mountains, and the adventures of those who had lived there long before him. The lodge continued to attract hikers and travelers. Families came to enjoy the peace of the mountains, children played in the cleared forest trails, and adventurers explored the paths Tom had marked. He guided them carefully, sharing lessons about nature, survival, and respect for the land. One day, a young girl approached Tom with wide eyes. "Mr. Tom," she said, "I want to be like you. I want to explore, learn, and protect the mountains too." Tom smiled warmly. "You can," he said. "The mountains and the lodge have many lessons to teach, but only those who are patient, careful, and brave can discover them." That afternoon, as he walked along the main trail, Tom reflected on how much had changed. The lodge had transformed from an abandoned building into a thriving place of life, learning, and adventure. He had gone from a broke hiker struggling day by day to a caretaker of a legacy, a protector of treasures, and a teacher to those who came seeking knowledge. He remembered the first day he arrived at the lodge, the peeling paint, dusty floors, and silent halls. Now laughter echoed through the rooms. Fires burned brightly in the fireplaces, and the smell of fresh pine and wood filled the air. Tom had brought life back to the lodge, but the lodge had also changed him. The mountains around him were alive with activity. Deer grazed in the meadows, birds sang in the tall trees, and the wind carried stories from one peak to another. Tom felt connected to everything, the land, the lodge, and the people who had once hidden treasures here. He knew he was part of a long chain of caretakers, and it was his responsibility to continue the legacy. One evening, after all the visitors had left, Tom sat by the fireplace in the hidden room. He looked at the treasures and journals, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. The journey had been challenging, exciting, and sometimes frightening, but it had taught him more than he could have imagined. Courage, patience, wisdom, and care were the real treasures. He thought about the future. He would continue to restore the lodge, maintain the trails, and welcome visitors. He would protect the hidden room and its treasures while sharing the knowledge and history he had discovered. The lodge would thrive not just as a building, but as a symbol of adventure, discovery, and responsibility. Tom smiled as he looked at the compass. Its arrow now pointed steadily toward the mountains, as if approving his decisions and guiding him forward. He felt ready for any new adventure the lodge might bring. He had discovered treasures, solved riddles, and unlocked the lodge's final secret. But he knew that life in the mountains was full of surprises. The lodge, once abandoned and silent, had become a home for all who sought adventure, knowledge, and the beauty of nature. Tom had become not just a hiker or a caretaker, but a guardian, a teacher, and a protector of a legacy that spanned generations. As the sun set behind the mountains, casting golden light across the forest, Tom stepped outside. He looked at the lodge with pride and gratitude. The hidden room, the treasures, and the maps had fulfilled their purpose. The lodge was alive, and so was the spirit of discovery it inspired. Tom whispered to the mountains, "Thank you for guiding me, for teaching me, and for trusting me with this legacy." The mountains seemed to answer with a quiet breeze, rustling the trees and carrying the scent of pine and earth. Tom felt at peace. He had inherited more than a lodge. He had inherited a story, a purpose, and a life filled with adventure and meaning. From that day forward, the lodge became a place where hikers, families, and adventurers came not just to rest, but to learn, explore, and be inspired. Tom continued to guide them, sharing lessons from the mountains, the hidden treasures, and the stories of those who had come before. The broke hiker who had arrived weeks ago had transformed into a man of courage, wisdom, and responsibility. The lodge, the hidden room, and the treasures had changed his life forever. But more importantly, they had given him a chance to change the lives of others, and so, the abandoned lodge, once forgotten and silent, became a symbol of hope, adventure, and legacy, a place where discovery, courage, and kindness would continue to shine for generations to come. Tom stood at the balcony that evening, looking out at the mountains and the forest below. The hidden room had revealed its secrets. The treasures had been secured, and the lodge had awakened. He smiled, knowing that the greatest treasure was not gold or gemstones, but the journey, the lessons, and the life he had built from the ruins of the abandoned lodge. The mountains whispered softly around him, carrying the promise of new adventures, new visitors, and new stories. And Tom, once a broke hiker, was ready to embrace them all, knowing that the lodge and its legacy would guide him forever.